email Kayla and tell Kayla to come and take a snapshot of this so we can get something, how we're doing these annual reports and annual reviews, and so we can make this part of our packet. Not part of this rezoning, but for CMR and Debbie. Pictures. This is a good crowd to take. Madam always bring the crowd. Thursday? You'll see you Thursday as well.
Oh, yes. I think Will and I tag team that one.
You're good, buddy. Yes, sir. How are you today? Mark. I'm Bill. That's good to meet you. Yes. Oh. Here for not that one. On the other one. Open this meeting up.
Good morning, everyone. I hereby call to order this meeting of the Escambia County Planning Rezoning Hearing for March 7th, and ask everyone at this time to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Staff members, do we have proof of publication of the hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does that publication also meet all of the legal requirements?
Yes, sir.
All right. Chair will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the legal.
So moved.
Motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I failed to mention we do have a quorum. I think we still have one open seat on the board, but we do have the rest of the board members here for a quorum, so we are ready to go. All right, board members, the rezoning hearing minutes from the previous meeting have been provided to you. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, chair will entertain a motion to accept as is.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The rezoning hearing package for March 7th and the findings of facts has been previously provided to all the board members. The chair will now entertain a motion to accept that rezoning hearing package with the findings of facts and the legal advertisements into evidence.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Excuse me. The rezoning hearing package with the findings of facts and the legal advertisements will be marked and included in the record for all of today's cases. At this time, we'll ask our court reporter, Dave, to please swear in the members of the staff that will be testifying.
Everyone raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
All right, thank you, sir. Board members, you've been previously provided these individuals' qualifications and resumes. Do any of you have questions about their ability to offer expert testimony in the area of land use and planning? All right, hearing none, we'll let the record reflect that these individuals be shown as experts in the area of land use and planning. At this hearing, the Planning Board is acting under its authority to hear and make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners, the BCC, on rezoning applications. These hearings are quasi-judicial in nature. Quasi-judicial hearings are like evidentiary hearings in a court of law, however, it is less formal. All testimony will be given under oath, and anyone testifying before the board may be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits that the planning board considers will be entered into evidence and made part of the record. Opinion testimony will be limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence in the record. Before making a decision, the planning board will consider the relevant testimony, the exhibits entered into evidence, and the applicable laws. Each individual who wishes to address the planning board must complete a speaker request form and submit it to the staff members. They are located at the back of the chambers. You will not be allowed to speak unless we have received a completed form. Please note that only those individuals who are present and give testimony on the record before this board will be allowed to speak at the subsequent hearing before the Board of County Commissioners. No new evidence can be presented to the BCC, therefore all testimony and evidence must be presented today. The Planning Board will provide a recommendation for each rezoning request to the BCC. They will then review the testimony, documents, exhibits, and consider the closing arguments. They will make a final decision. All decisions by the BCC are final. Anyone who wishes to seek review of that, judicial review of that decision must do so in a court of competent jurisdiction within 30 days that the BCC either approves or rejects the recommended order from the Planning Board. All written or oral communications outside of this hearing with members of the Planning Board regarding any matters under consideration today are considered ex parte communications. Ex parte communications are presumed prejudicial under Florida law and must be disclosed as provided in BCC Resolution 96-13. As each case is heard, the chair will ask that any board member who has been involved in ex parte communication identify themselves and describe that communication. The rezoning criteria, if we could bring those up. Rachel, thank you. As required by Section 2-7.2 of the Escambia County Land Development Code, the Planning Board's recommendations to the BCC shall include consideration of the following approval conditions. Approval conditions. The applicant has the burden of presenting competent substantial evidence to the reviewing board establishing that the requested zoning district would contribute to or result in logical and orderly development pattern. The appropriate surrounding area within which uses and conditions may be considered vary and not necessarily the same area as required for the mailed notifications. A logical and orderly pattern shall require demonstration of each of the following conditions. First one is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The proposed rezoning is consistent with the future land use category as described in LDC Chapter 3 and with all other applicable goals, objectives, and policies of that comprehensive plan. If the rezoning is required to properly enact a FLU map amendment, it must be transmitted to the state agency for review. The proposed zoning is consistent with the proposed FLU and conditional to its adoption. So in today's case, we do have a small scale amendment, so we'll be going into recess on the planning board, going over to regular from the rezoning hearing, going over to regular planning board, hearing that small scale amendment, and then coming back over to the quasi-judicial hearing. Consistent with zoning district provisions. The proposed zoning is consistent with the proposed and intent of any other zoning established provisions prescribed by the proposed district in the chapter. Compatibility with surroundings. All of the permitted uses of the proposed zoning, not just those that are anticipated by the rezoning applicant, are compatible as defined in Chapter 6 with the surrounding uses. The uses of any surrounding undeveloped land shall be considered the permitted uses of the applicable district. Compatibility is not considered with the potential conditional uses or with any other non-conforming or unapproved uses. Also, in establishing the compatibility of a residential use, there is no additional burden to demonstrate the compatibility of specific residents or activities that are currently protected under fair housing laws. Appropriate if spot zoning. where the proposed zoning would establish or reinforce a condition of spot zoning as defined in Chapter 6. The isolated district would nevertheless be transitional in character between the adjoining districts, or the differences with those districts would be minor or sufficiently limited. The extent of these mitigating characteristics or conditions demonstrates an appropriate site-specific balance of interest between the isolated district and the adjoining lands. Appropriate with changed or changing conditions. If the land uses or development conditions within an area surrounding the property of the rezoning have changed, the changes are to such a degree and character that it's in the public's interest to allow new uses, densities, or intensities in that area throughout the rezoning, and the permitted uses of the proposed district are appropriate and not premature for the area or likely to contribute to sprawl. At the beginning of each case, as long as there are no objections from the applicant, we'll ask the staff members to briefly present location and zoning maps as well as photos of the property. Then we will hear from the applicant and any witnesses that they may wish to call. Then we will hear from the staff and any witnesses they may wish to call. And finally, we will hear from all individuals who have completed a speaker request form. So we do have 2 cases today, and we will go directly into our first case. The first case is Z 2023-03. The applicant is Meredith Bush, agent for Calvary Ridge LLC, who is the owner. Motley Court, 7.43 plus minus acres, from low density residential to medium density residential. At this time, I'm going to ask the board members if there's been any ex parte communication between you, the applicant, agents, attorneys, witnesses, fellow planning board members, or anyone from the general public prior to this hearing. I'll also ask that you disclose if you have visited the subject property and disclose if you are a relative or business associate to any of the parties. And good morning down at the end, Steve.
No to all.
Thank you, sir.
No to all.
Thank you.
No to all.
Chairman, no to all.
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 All right, thank you. Staff, was notice of the hearing sent to all interested parties?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was the notice also properly posted on the subject property?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Good morning, Meredith. Do you have any objection to the staff presenting maps or photography? Okay. All right. We'll go ahead with that. Good morning. Who's presenting this morning?
Good morning. So this is Motley Court, rezoning from low-density residential to medium-density residential.
Okay. If you would introduce yourself and your position for everyone, please.
Kimberly Wilson, Urban Planner 2.
All right. Thank you, Kimberly. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So this is the location map of the site. This is the zoning map showing the medium-density residential as well as the low-density residential surrounding. This is the future land use map. And this is the existing land use map of the site, showing the vacant parcel. This is an aerial map. This is the notice of public hearing rezoning sign. That's looking east at the rear of the church at the site. Looking east again from the site. Looking north along Motley Court. And that's south along Motley Court. That's directly across from the site, looking west. And that's all the photos that we have for that.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, I'll just jump straight to the findings.
We're going to introduce the applicant at this point.
Okay.
Good morning. In this case, Meredith is an attorney, so she is bound by a specific set of guidelines, so she doesn't have to be sworn in. But if you would please state your full name and address for the record, please.
Sure, it's Meredith Bush, 125 East Intendencia, Pensacola, Florida, 32502. I am an attorney with Clark Partington.
Thank you. Welcome. Have you received a copy of the rezoning hearing package and the findings of facts?
Yes.
Okay. And do you understand that you have the burden of providing substantial competent evidence that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the comp plan, furthers the goals, objectives, and policies of that plan, and is not in conflict with the Land Development Code?
Yes.
Okay. Please proceed.
Sure, I'll jump right into the criteria. As to criteria A, The proposed amendment is consistent with the intent and purpose of the future land use flu category of mixed-use suburban. As to criteria B, the proposed amendment to MDR is consistent with the intent and purpose of the Land Development Code. The parcel is adjacent to medium-density residential and low-density residential property. The medium-density residential district establishes appropriate areas and land use regulations for residential uses at medium densities within suburban or urban areas. The primary intent of the district is to provide for residential neighborhood development in an efficient urban pattern of well-connected streets at a greater dwelling unit density than the low-density residential district. Residential uses within the MDR district are limited to single-family and two-family dwellings. The residential nature of MDR is consistent with the intent and purpose of the Land Development Code. As to criteria C, the proposed amendment is compatible with surrounding existing uses in the area. Within a 1,500-foot radius, the applicant has identified properties that are zoned LDR, MDR, HDMU, COM, and HCLI. Residential uses within the MDR district include most forms of single-family dwellings, which are compatible with the surrounding area. Within the general vicinity, there are residential uses, a church, a mobile home park, a convenience store deli, mobile detailing, dog grooming, and the Sugar Hill apartment complex. To ensure additional compatibility with the existing adjacent uses, if the amendment is approved, further review and evaluation through the DRC process may be necessary. As to criteria D, spot zoning, the amendment request, if granted, would not create spot zoning. This property is adjacent to MDR zoning and within 1,500 feet of HDMU, COM, and HCLI zoning. And then as to criteria E, appropriate with changed conditions, based on the existing uses and intensities and the zoning district allowances, the proposed amendment would not create urban sprawl and would be compatible with the existing development. It is in the public interest to allow MDR zoning. The proposed rezoning will contribute to a logical and orderly development pattern.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any questions of the applicant at this time? All right, we'll go into the staff presentation. We'll give you an opportunity to come back in a few minutes, Mira.
So to address I'm sorry. Criterion A, consistent with comprehensive plan. The findings, the proposed amendment to medium-density residential we found was consistent, or it is consistent, with the intent and the purpose of the flu category mixed-use suburban. Criterion B, consistent with the Land Development Code. Staff findings, the proposed amendment to rezone to medium-density residential is consistent with the intent and purpose of the Land Development Code. The applicant is seeking said zoning designation for a parcel totaling 7.39 plus acres. The current zoning for the parcel is low-density residential at 4 dwelling units an acre. Together with the low-density requirement of 4 dwelling units an acre for the existing zoning category designation, the intent and purpose of LDR is to allow for detached single-family dwellings only. The predominant allowable land uses within the LDR zoning districts are single-family detached dwellings and separate recorded lots, either within an existing recorded subdivision, community, or lots with recorded meets and bounds, description typically adjacent to or contiguous to existing subdivisions and communities. The intent and purpose of low-density residential is to allow for, again, detached single-family dwellings only, primarily with the purpose of preserving the character of the existing and established communities within the LDR suburban areas as governed by the Escambia County Land Development Code. Likewise, sections 3-2.5 provides the LDR district provides that the LDR district is appropriate to provide transitions between areas zoned or used rural residential or rural mixed use in areas zoned for low density use or medium density residential. The property is adjacent to medium density residential and low density residential, which consist of an existing church, mobile home park, and residential developments. For this rezoning request from LDR to MDR would not conflict with the Escambia County Land Development Code, section 3-2.5. The zoning category of medium-density residential is stated or listed as a transitional district. Equally important, the requested zoning change to medium-density residential is a transitional district and limited to single-family and two-family dwellings only as provided there in Section 3-2.7, B, 1A-C of the LDC. Along with that, medium-density residential has a density of 10 dwelling units per acre, which require a minimum of 50 foot at the right-of-way for single-family detached dwellings. Additionally, two-family dwellings are allowed only on land zoned R3 or V4 prior to the adoption of the MDR zoning. And this multifamily dwelling unit multifamily dwelling units to 4 units, up to 4 units, per dwelling, meaning a quadruplex, only on land zone V4 prior to MDR zoning with a minimum of 80 feet at the right-of-way. For informational purposes, the previous zoning for this parcel was VR2 prior to the adoption of MDR zoning. The primary intent of the district is to provide for residential neighborhood development in an efficient urban pattern of well-connected streets and at greater dwelling unit density and diversity than the low-density residential district. Based upon the regulations with the intent, purpose, and the allowable use of low-density residential and the rezoning request to medium-density residential, with its applicable regulations, staff concludes that criterion B is met. Criterion C, compatible with surrounding uses. Findings, the proposed amendment is compatible with the surrounding existing residential uses in the area. Within that, or the 500-foot radius area, staff identified properties with the predominantly low-density residential LDR and MDR, medium-density residential zoning districts. The existing uses along Motley Court, which is a residential road, are a mix of non-residential uses and church and residential uses. The other surrounding areas immediate to the subject area is all considered residential. There's a predominantly residential pattern to the west. Criterion D, appropriate if spot zoning. It was determined that the proposed medium-density residential zoning would not be considered spot zoning based upon the definition. Therefore, staff concludes that the request to rezone from LDR to MDR zoning would be compatible with the surrounding properties in the area that are already developed and intended lower densities and intensities. Criterion E, appropriate with change or changing conditions. The land use or development conditions within the area surrounding the property of the rezoning has not changed. Development within the area has remained low-density residential, which is at the 4 dwelling units per acre, and medium-density residential, 10 dwelling units an acre. The request for medium-density residential, the potential uses, densities, and intensities allowed by the district would be compatible with the existing surrounding development patterns. The proposed amendment would not create or contribute to urban sprawl. And staff concludes findings. That's it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Wilson,
Thank you.
appreciate that. Meredith, did you have anything you wanted to add at this time? Okay. Board members, any questions of staff before we go into public comments? Okay. Hearing none, we will go into public comment portion. For those members of the public who wish to speak on this matter, please note that the planning board bases its decisions on approval, conditions, and exceptions described in 2-7.2 of the Escambia County Land Development Code. During our deliberations, the planning board does not consider general statements of support or opposition. Accordingly, please limit your testimony to the approved conditions and exceptions described in 2-7.2. Please also note that only individuals who are here today and give testimony on the record before the planning board will be allowed to speak at a subsequent Board of County Commission hearing. We have quite a few speakers this morning, and we're going to hear from each of you that wish to speak on this. I would like to reiterate was very wordy in what I just read, but basically, the planning board can only consider the criteria that the staff has gone through. Okay? There may be a lot of other concerns, and I'm not saying that they're not valid concerns. I'm just saying that what we are by law only allowed to consider are those criteria that were presented. So things like traffic and stormwater and things like that that sometimes come up very common in these meetings, it's not our purview. We don't have control over those. We can only control those criteria, and we will have them up on the board again. So what we're going to ask is that you limit your testimony to those categories that are up on the board, because that's the only things we can consider. Okay? And you'll have an opportunity, if you speak here today, to go in front of the Board of County Commissioners. You can't present anything new there to them. It all has to be presented here today first. So if you plan on speaking there, you'll need to get all your comments on the record. We do have a time limit for each speaker, and that's just because we have so many. Horace, to follow up on that, would you explain a little bit about the DRC process, and if this does go to a development, what happens then through the DRC? Because that may alleviate some of the concerns that are out there, if there are.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good morning, board members. And we want to thank all of the citizens for being here and showing up and having some concerns in the neighborhood. That's what it's all about. But as Mr. Brisky stated so well, at this point, we can only address the issues, what the requirements of the Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan. Now, if the Board of County Commissioners decide to approve this rezoning, then if the applicant, whoever, decide to come in with a use that is consistent with the rezoning and the zoning category, for example, whatever it may be subdivision, may be anything that's allowed by the MDR zoning category, and which is very, very specific. There's another review that is called the development review process, in which the applicant must submit his plans, must submit the drawings or whatever the development may be. We will consider, we have requirements for roads, stormwater, and other uses that they must meet before we can issue, before the DRC can make and issue a development order to proceed that development. So it's not over at the BCC stage. There are still very, very specific requirements for roads, stormwater, and other pertinent issues that my Land Development Code and with our technical reviewers, they will be addressing if this proceed to the next level for approval. So it's not over at this point.
Okay. And I don't want to belabor the point, but that's why we explain that, because it is a complicated process, and it's frustrating sometimes when folks come before the planning board and they want to talk about traffic or stormwater or things like that, and it's just not within our purview. We don't have control over those areas. So with that, we'll go directly into our speakers, and the first person is Mark Taylor. And Mr. Taylor, when you come up, and this will be for everyone, you'll come up, you'll be sworn in, we are under oath, and then you'll state your name and address for the record before you start speaking. So.
Do you solemnly swear or testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Good deal. Thank you, Chairman. Mark Taylor, 1111 East Marino Street, Pensacola, Florida,
Can adjust that
32503.
thing up so you don't have to bend over. There you
Thank
go.
you, sir.
A little more comfortable.
Thank you. And I am the applicant and here in support of the project. Obviously, all to the north is medium density residential, and to the south, even though it is LDR, it's a mobile home park. So it's non-conforming LDR. It fits well. And I hope that we could get y'all support today, and I'll be here for the duration if you have any questions or thoughts. Obviously, Ms. Bush does a great job, but thank you all so much.
All right. Thank you, sir. Bill Mixon. Morning, sir. Please be sworn in, and then your name and address for the record.
Raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Sir, your name and address for the record, please.
Bill Mixon, 826 Bell Alliance Drive, Pensacola, Florida, 32514.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
I'll try to be brief, and thank you for your presentation. I mostly come down here to find out what's going on and not do the hearsay. I didn't want to check whether I was for or against it. I had two things. I got a background in capital projects, and I want this capital project to be successful. Cost, schedule, meet the intent, everybody's happy. What I didn't realize, what gets you sometimes is the impact of upstream and downstream, which is traffic and stormwater. And I just want to make sure, you got an engineering department, they love looking at stuff like this. When will they look at that to see? And if you need anything, put that in the scope of the project. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, sir. And that's what Mr. Horace Jones was speaking of. If the rezoning is recommended for approval and the Board of County Commissioners supports that recommendation, then the project owner would come back with a proposal of what they want to build there, if they're going to build something. Then it goes into the Development Review Committee, which looks at stormwater, emergency access, roads, traffic. The list is literally, how many are on the checklist, Horace? Probably 30 things at least.
Yes, and it could be more. It's contingent upon the constraint of the project. We're just not, we are governed by the Land Development Code and the rules, very, very specific. We do have engineering staff that look at it. We do have our fire safety people. We do have traffic people. We do have stormwater requirements. So for any project that is in need of development, it's a very, very stringent process, and it's very detailed, and that's open to the public as well. It will not come back before this board, but there's another level of review that staff we have to look at. Yes, sir.
That's everybody concerned. You're in feasibility for this project. I think you need to do a little front-end engineering, because I think there's already some stormwater issues at Pate and 10 Mile Road that's addressing in heavy rains. So I think you might need to consider looking at some of that. So
Yes,
that's
sir.
all I have.
It will all be looked at if they come back in for asking to develop the property.
Yes, sir.
This is simply a rezoning application.
Yes, and just to add what Mr. Kaprisky stated, they will be, whatever the project is, they will have to get an engineer, and we have an engineering department that will examine those issues very, very closely and very, very site-specific. Yes, sir, for the whole area. Yes, sir.
That's all I'm asking. Well, good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mixon. Ruby Reyes? Good morning.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. Good morning, ma'am. Your name and address for the
Good morning.
record, please.
My name is Ruby Rive. I live at 710 East 10 Mile Road. Just a little quick walk down to Motley Court. I would say regarding your statement regarding negligence, that the reason we're here today is because of negligence of the Board of County Commissioners when that whole subdivision was started. Motley Court was to go from 10 Mile Road and exit up near Rocky Creek. So there would have been no problem. However, because we can't talk about that today, we can't say how negligent it would be to increase the traffic on that road. Those experts in land development say this man may or may not build on that property. Sitting in your chair, you think about this. Why would he spend millions of dollars to look at a tree produce and lose leaves? You know and I know he plans to develop that property. So it is frivolous that you make us not be able to produce our facts and our problems at this time. That's all I have to say.
Yes, ma'am. And again, I just want to explain, you will have the opportunity to present those items. It's just not at this board. You can explain that to the Board of County Commissioners when it goes in front of them, because they have authority over all of those areas, as well as when it goes to the development review process, which is a public hearing as well. and those issues can be drawn up. So we're not trying to stop anyone from giving comments. It's just the state of Florida Department of Economic Opportunity has very direct rules as to what we have to consider for rezoning. And it's those items that are on the board up there. And so that's why we say that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
but there's no reason they can't say something if they want to, right?
They could certainly say whatever they like.
So when they go to the county commission meeting, it's on record.
That's fine. It's just want to make it clear that that's not what we're voting on today. So, yes, ma'am, come back.
If we're allowed to make a statement regarding traffic, then I do have a statement
Okay.
regarding the traffic. That is, that there are 3 schools located on 10 Mile Road. There are also a middle school, a high school. There's 5 buses that go down 10 Mile Road and up into that subdivision every day twice. We have people who cut through that road twice. We have people coming from Scenic Hills, Sugar Creek, down that road. It is a mess of cars at all times. And to think that we're going to add at least 170 more cars every morning and every evening and all through the day. It is we'll be almost unable to ever leave our driveways. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Reve. Linda Vita?
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the truth, and nothing but the truth.
Ditto, Miss Revise. And my name is Linda Vita. I live at 660 East 10 Mile Road, right down the street from her. Ditto to what she says, and I'm totally against it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Richard West?
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, and nothing but the truth.
Hi, my name is Richard West. I live at 1208 Tiffany Drive. This is the road that dead ends. It doesn't really dead end, though. It's a cul-de-sac that butts up against that property. I'm going to go with the, so you can see where Tiffany Drive is there. I live right along that stretch. I have concerns of that road being opened up, for one. But 2, just the traffic going in and out of Motley Court. I know you can't consider that, but it's still it's a very real issue for this neighborhood. We have over 500 homes in that neighborhood right now. Figure 1.5 cars per house. That's 750 cars going out that one street. So I'm going to go to the criteria that said it's a well connected, because it's not. It's not a well-connected neighborhood to be able to handle an additional 70 or 107, whatever the number is, houses come in there. That's it. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, sir. And thank you for connecting it to the criteria. That's something that we can consider. Raymond Higgins? All right, sir.
He's a lawyer, sir.
Okay.
Good morning, board members. My name is Raymond Higgins. Most importantly, my address is 10530 Motley Court, which is about a block away from this planned development. I do think that your staff and Ms. Bush today presented a lot of conclusive remarks about this being compatible with the zoning requirements and all these other requirements that I have no idea what they're talking about. But I'd like to talk basically about the compatibility of this new development to the units. You saw some photographs which I thought were very misleading photographs of the area around there. You looked to the east of the church and you saw the church's parking lot. You didn't show on the other side of the woods houses that these people live in. You look at that overhead aerial, you'll see nothing to the north, to the east, to the west, but residential units. We'd like to keep it that way for a lot of the reasons that have already been expressed, such as traffic, probably the elephant in the room that nobody's talking about is, this is supposedly going to be subsidized housing. We don't want that in our neighborhood. We know that subsidized housing pretty much brings crime, drugs. We don't want that in our neighborhood. I know that you're not to be considering that, but it seems to me earlier you said we either raise it or waive it, and I didn't want to waive it. But no, in conclusion, I do not think that the conclusive remarks made by Ms. Bush and your staff establish that this is compatible to the neighborhood. We have one convenience store on the other side of the road. We have an apartment complex on the other side of 10 Mile Road, which is not in the neighborhood. Our neighborhood is residential units only.
Thank you, sir. This looks like Roger Moore. Hope I'm reading your handwriting correctly. Morning, sir.
Good morning. Raise your right hand, sir. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, sir.
Well, I didn't know I couldn't talk about traffic, so I won't waste your time. But I'm not a traffic engineer, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out that adding this much more traffic to what we already have. Motley Court is a very small two-lane road emptying onto 10 Mile, which is another two-lane road. And during the peak traffic times, it's a mess now. By increasing that, it would make it a lot worse. And thank you.
Thank you, sir. James Pace.
Raise your right hand, sir. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Good morning. My name is James Pace. I live at 1148 Corsa Terrace, Pensacola, Florida, 32514. I have been there for 26 years, and I had wanted to talk about traffic like the others have talked about it. So you've probably already gotten an earful, but all I can tell you is it gets worse every year. There's one way in, one way out through Motley Court, and I live in a house on the eastern side of the Calvary Ridge, and I am, if you see Tiffany Drive, right where the TIF is, that's my house, and I definitely do not want a road cut through there. We already have enough problems. I drive probably as far as anybody has to drive in order to get out of the Motley Court development. I definitely do not want to see this go above a low-density zone. Thank you.
Mr. Pace, I had a question for you. Thank you, sir. I'm not very familiar with this area, but you can't see it on the map here, but is the entrance to Corsa Terrace, you have to come off of Motley Court as well, or do you get into your neighborhood from another access point?
Okay, I come in, could you go back to the other, I come in on Motley Court, I head north, and I take a right at Deidre, and then a left there, forget the name of that road, and then I have to take another right and go down, and I finally end up on Ridgeview Lane. Then I make another right, and I come down, and then finally I'm able to make a right on Corsa Terrace. I probably drive further than anybody else in the development, and I've done this for 26 years, and it has just gotten worse every year. And you know, you're going to have more school buses, and but the automobiles, the trucks, the buses, it's going to be a mess, I think, and I think it should stay as a low-density zone. Thank you.
Okay,
Any
thank
more
you, sir.
questions?
Nope, that's perfect, thank you. Raji Campbell? Morning, sir.
Raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
My name is Raji Campbell. I live at 1124 Corsa Terrace. He's my neighbor down on the end of the street. First of all, I know the criteria. I'm against this. I wish for it to stay low-density residential for a couple of reasons. I'm worried about property value more than anything. Also, the risk of probabilities of crime. I mean, I'm willing to take my chances in lower numbers rather than higher numbers because you don't know what you're getting. I mean, this property has been a thorn in our side for a while. At one time, we had drugs in the neighborhood. They come through that property where we had to post it off. I'm against it.
Thank you, sir. Leonard Mitchell? Morning, sir.
Raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. I hear a lot about
Sir, your name and address for the record,
Leonard
please.
Mitchell, 714 Meadowview Lane.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
I hear a lot about the trailer court in the church. Well, when they put that church in there, they actually came around and asked for signatures so nobody in the neighborhood will complain about the church. Now, as far as the trailer court, I was lucky enough to let me move in because they were there before me. So I'm against this whole thing. And then one street, 2 lanes. It's just too many people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. William Craig? Okay. Sir, if you don't speak at this hearing, you won't be allowed to speak at the Board of County Commissioners. You still want to waive your right to speak? Yes. Okay. All right, Julie Rosalie? Maybe Rosalie? Okay, thank you.
Raise your right hand, ma'am. Do you solemnly swear the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. My name's Julie Rosalie, and I'm at 777 Ridge Road. I've lived there since 1990. I think when we're talking about incompatibility, we need to address that the whole project itself is incompatible with the existing roadway. There is only one road in and out to anybody that lives in that neighborhood. People kind of lean towards talking about another entrance. That's totally impossible. This property owner doesn't own enough property to even butt up against another roadway to get further access. I did have a question. The entranceway that looks like, from Motley to get on the property, do you know what the footage is on that?
Do we know what the dimensions is? 60 foot wide? Okay.
Okay, I thought at our last meeting it was less than 60, that's why I was asking. But anyway, I disagree with it, and I'd like to protect my right to speak at the next meeting on the other issues that we're not addressing today.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Nelda Miller? Not speaking? Okay. Stephanie Sansom? Good morning, ma'am.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. My name's Stephanie Sansom. I live at 10530 Motley Court. And I've been here for 20 years. I've got children that I've raised. I've got one I'm still raising. I like this low density. I moved here because it's a suburb. I'm not looking for medium density. I moved to these suburbs. And I wouldn't be living there if it weren't the suburbs. Low density, not all this.
Okay. Thank you. Michael Blunt? Morning, sir.
Raise your hand, you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. My name's Michael Blunt. I live at 790 Deidre Avenue. I'm looking at the section here of compatibility with surroundings, and I just had a question on this. It says, also in establishing the compatibility of residential use, there are no additional burden to demonstrate the compatibility of specific residents or activities protected by fair housing law. What do they mean by no additional burden? And is that something that we can kind of argue against? Because it's clearly creating an additional burden to the surrounding residents, you know, for various factors, whether it be traffic or crime, because there's definitely going to be additional crime with low housing units coming in.
So my understanding of that is that it doesn't put additional burdens on anything that would relate to fair housing laws, like you can't add any discriminatory wording or anything that would affect fair housing laws. So
understood.
Yeah.
And does the church play any role in this? Because, I mean, it's ironic that it's Calvary Chapel and the name of this group is Calvary Ridge. I was told that the church has nothing to do with it, but it seems like the church does have something to do with it. Can y'all confirm or deny that?
We'll have to ask the applicant if they want to answer that.
We purchased land outright a couple of years ago, the church.
So they have nothing to do with it. Gotcha. All right. Well, I'd just like to put my comments out here that I disagree with this. I think it's very unjust to the neighborhood. It's going to create lots of issues, clearly. I think it's based off of just greed, people wanting to make money off of our land. So no further comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie Hubbard. Good morning, miss.
Raise your right hand, you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
My name's Katie Hubbard. I live at 790, oh, sorry, 790 Deidre Avenue. I just want to say that I agree with all the statements you've already heard this morning. I think on paper, when you're looking at all the conditions being met, yeah, it looks great. But when you're a resident that actually lives in this neighborhood and you're having to deal with an influx of that many people moving in and that many more cars coming in, it just creates a real burden on everyone living there. So I just wanted that to be on the record. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Please, yes, give it to us.
Yes, ma'am. Marcia Maple.
Raise your right hand, you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes. Good morning. My name is Marcia Maple, and I live at 1100 Corsa Terrace. And I moved into this neighborhood specifically because it's a nice neighborhood. I've lived there, and this area that, if you can put it back up on the screen, the aerial, what you're seeing up there is this is low density. And I know you don't want to hear the thing about the traffic flow, but I live on the corner of a street. I know that when people are coming in, they're either coming in to visit someone that knows them, they're delivering food, or they're up to no good, or they may be lost, okay? Because it's only one way out. This gentleman had made a comment, because I watched the video of the last board meeting, and he made a comment about having to travel all the way back to go to a Bible study. Thank you very much for traveling there. Well, imagine being on Corsa Terrace on the corner, just like the other gentleman talked about being at the end, and we are having to drive all the way around. So if you open up Tiffany, you are now flooding that area with more people. Motley Court has speed bumps for a specific reason. When people come through this area where we live at, in the back area, there are no speed bumps, so now you're going to add all this other stuff. When you talk about the compatibility to the surrounding area, you took a very broad look at that, 1,500, you know, this broad area. To the west on Tiffany, or not Tiffany, but to Pate and all of that area, you are correct. It's mixed. It's all done. But this is a very small little section, and now we are taking it. Is it compatible with us? Absolutely not. it is compatible with the other places. If we have a hurricane, I'm telling you, we've already been through it a couple of times. If we can't get out of there, we've had 4 house fires since I've lived there, and I've been there for 27 years, ladies and gentlemen. And that is not a safe area. Keep it low density, have it in the military, because I'm a retired Navy chief. Part of the solution to a problem is bring a viable solution. This is not a viable solution. This is adding to the problem. It is also adding to the lack of safety from my neighborhood, and I am totally against it. Thank you very much. Please take that into account. Have a good day.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your service to our country, please.
Absolutely.
Bobby McMillan. Good morning, sir.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in these cases will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do. My name is Bobby McMillan. I live at 923 Valley Ridge Drive. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Since we can't talk about traffic and all that, that's cool. It's got a few points here. One is the value of the homes. The other is if they do build in here, the stress that it's going to put on the neighborhood, Motley, 10 Mile Road, for whatever period it takes to do whatever development they're trying to do. There'll be a lot of stress on the neighborhood. There'll be a lot of stress on the neighborhood, them building in there. The gentleman was talking about bringing a road through Tiffany. I live on 923 Valley Ridge. I'm not sure what this map, but anyway, Valley Ridge and Tiffany, I'm like 2 houses down from, okay, well, we got Valley Ridge, right up in here, come on down a little bit, right there. So I'm right down there right up in there. So to try to run a road through Tiffany and out to Motley, I don't see it's not gonna help the neighborhood any further. In and out, it's gonna make it worse. And the other thing is just safety. Like some people are speaking of we don't know what's gonna be built there and what kind of clientele it's gonna bring into the neighborhood. What kind of clientele it's gonna bring into the neighborhood. Could increase crime and stuff like that in the neighborhood, and we definitely don't want that. I've been living out there for 28 years, and we haven't really had no serious issues in that neighborhood. The one-way in and one-way out, I think, is great. Back down where I live, yes, it takes a minute to get out the neighborhood, but I think that's great also, because if criminals want to come, most of the time they're not going to come back in there because it takes too long to get out. Probably get caught before they get out. So that's about all I have for today. I just wanted to get up and say something so I'll be able to speak at the next meeting. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Phyllis Jessel? Jessel. Thank you. Good morning.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in these cases will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. My name is Phyllis Teschel. I live at 733 Valley Grande Road, Pensacola, Florida, 32514. I've lived there since 2002, and before that, I was gone for 5 years, but before that, I lived there also. I have one question. You don't live there, do you? We all live there. We should have the say.
Ms. Teschel,
On our neighborhood.
we'll need you to
I'm
speak
sorry.
into the microphone because
Okay,
we're
I'm
recording
sorry.
everything. Yes, ma'am.
He doesn't live there. We all live there. We should be the ones to say what can be built there. And you do have to think about crime when you have lower housing. We have good housing now. We love it there. We want to protect our neighborhood. It's our neighborhood. It's not his. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who has not spoken yet that wishes to speak on this case? All right, hearing none, I will hereby close the public comment portion of the hearing. Board members, do you have any questions of the staff or applicant at this point?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
All right, go ahead, sir.
I know there was mention in one of the comments about the right-of-way at Motley Road and the length of that, which I believe is 60 feet, correct? There was, and the reason that was brought up last month was if it's under 80 feet, that puts restrictions on the parcel, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what are those restrictions?
There are certain type of uses. For example, attached townhouses, that is a potential use, which can have conditional use approval, but they gotta meet that specification. So the only thing that we are looking at today is a single family potential, whatever the MDR allows for subdivision. That's why in the narrative, in the notes, it says single family dwelling units only. Only, because if you look at the requirement for a single family, I believe it's 40 feet, is that correct, Kim? So the only thing that will be allowed there, basically, are single family homes only, not townhouses, not attached townhouses, unless there's another process that they would like to go through. But with that roadway requirement, that is going to be an impediment as well.
All right,
Thank you. Horace, I have a question concerning connectivity. If we could go to the picture, the photograph of the parcel. I'm sorry, the aerial. There you go. So there's been a lot of concern about Tiffany Drive being extended through this property. I know in some cases that has happened with, previous projects in place. What are the requirements through the DRC process that would allow for that to happen or not happen in either case?
That has already been basically brought up on another project proposal, and at that time, our traffic engineering department, and please, Drew, if you can correct me, I believe they stated that you cannot have no access to Tiffany. So that was reviewed prior to this, and our access department, they said no access to Tiffany. Now, of course, this will have to be reviewed again if the BCC approves this and if it come back to the site plan review process. But the past history would definitely be considered as well, based upon other commentaries that our staff has already made based upon previous project proposals for this site, that there was no access to Tiffany. But I want to be clear, this would, if it approved, this would be reviewed again, and the previous history would be considered by our access management department as well.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Horace, related to that, isn't there a requirement in the land development code for developments of 100 or more? There's a requirement for 2 entrances and exits?
Yes, sir, that is a requirement in the land development code. But as you can see, for the sake of the community, what I just like to be transparent with facts. The lot is very constrained. It's only 7-point-something acres. Yes, there's a proposed density of 10 dwelling units per acre. However, and this goes for all projects, I'm not trying to support one project or another, but for any project, we have to consider stormwater requirements. We have to consider the lot width requirements for each lot got to be. We have to consider the road, if there's some road potential. So all of those things will limit the amount of lots that can go there. So just because you see 10 dwellings per acre, that's the gross. The lot is constrained by the size, by the shape, and by the configuration of the lot itself. So there's no way they're gonna get 100 dwelling units out there. I mean, that's almost practically impossible because of the size, shape, and the other necessary elements that has to come if this is approved and if that potential use come in for development.
Well, just I don't want the number of 100 to really run amok here. It's 7.43 times 10 is 74. So right. And that's the proposed. And then as we sit here today, if someone bought it and developed it, they could max put 29 parcels out there at 4 times 7.43. Again, constrained.
Yeah.
and I know you love these kind of questions, but I didn't want the number of 100 to really, you know.
Yes, Mr. Walker, you are correct. That's how come. Again, we don't really want to be putting no numbers out because I do know that this will be, if it is approved, it's going to be reduced drastically because of all necessary constraints. It may not be 29, it may be 30. We don't know, but it definitely is going to be reduced drastically because of the shape, the size, and the land itself. If this is approved for potential development. Because I don't want to say, well, Mr. Jones said 50. Mr. Jones not saying 50. Mr. Jones said at this time, the constraints of the law will be a guiding factor tremendously.
Yeah, as a follow-up, my point, a follow-up to my point was, we tend to daisy chain developments off of one entrance, and that's where I'm looking at the mission creep, for the lack of a better term. I don't know how many homes are in Motley Court now with one entrance, and then you add an additional development with, 50 homes, which Horace did not say. So again, you have mission creep in it. These neighborhoods with one entrance, it does become a safety issue.
And let me expand on that just a little bit and make sure I'm clear. When Mr. Ingwell says one entrance to the neighborhood using Motley, that's not really what we're talking about when we're talking about one entrance to a project. It would be the entrance that could go on the 60-foot right-of-way. It does not take into consideration how many subdivisions are off of Motley Court. Is that correct? I mean, I know your DRC process will look at that, but what I'm saying is the requirement is per parcel or per project. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so yeah, just to be clear, there is a different standard, but I get what you're saying. There's a lot of projects off of Motley Court, which is the only ingress and egress into there. So,
Absolutely.
okay. Ms. Bush, would you like to bring up any additional information, give a closing statement or anything like that?
Just very briefly, I would like to reiterate that we feel we have met the criteria outlined in the Land Development Code. Your staff agrees that we've met the criteria outlined in the Land Development Code, and that staff opinion was accepted as an expert opinion. This board is charged with considering competent and substantial evidence in a quasi-judicial hearing. And while I appreciate the impassioned pleas of the surrounding neighborhood, a lot of what they said, if not all, would not constitute competent and substantial evidence. You're charged with looking at the criteria. I would remind the board that your own comprehensive plan has a private property rights element in it, protecting the rights of an individual property owner to develop their property. And many of the speakers that you heard from today are already zoned MDR. They're in the MDR district. Those on Tiffany, on Corsa, on Deidre, that's all MDR, which is directly adjacent to this district. When you're looking at consistency and compatibility, you're looking at the proposed uses as a whole. And MDR is a residential district. This is a residential area. And so the proposed zoning is consistent and compatible with the Land Development Code. So we would just ask that you approve or recommend approval of the rezoning request. A lot of the comments regarding traffic, that's going to be addressed at DRC. I know last time there was mention of a possible connection to Tiffany. I later learned that there had been some previous proposals, not from this client, but where the staff had already looked at connection to Tiffany. And to be frank, they would give up a lot to connect to Tiffany. So, it wouldn't necessarily be something that they're going to do. There are no conceptual plans. Right now, we're simply asking for zoning. When we have proposed plans, we'll bring that in through the DRC process. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, board members. Any questions of the applicant or the staff members in this case? Okay, Chair will entertain a motion on this item.
All right, I will make a motion to approve the zoning for MDR in concurrence with staff's findings of fact being consistent in all 5 categories.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. For those of you that spoke, you will be allowed to speak at the Board of County Commission hearing, which I would highly recommend, just concerning everything that you're concerned about up there. So we'll ask that you please be orderly as you leave, as we still do have other cases. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we are going to put the quasi-judicial hearing in recess, and I will hereby open the regular planning board meeting. This is a regular planning board meeting for March 7th. Called to order. We do have a quorum. Do we have proof of publication for the regular planning board meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay, does that publication meet all the legal requirements?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the legal.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. You've been previously provided the meeting minutes. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those previous board meeting minutes? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion to accept as is.
So moved. Second.
Motion, second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The planning board hearing package for March 7th, 2023 previously been provided to board members. The chair will now accept a motion to accept the hearing package and the legal advertisement into evidence. We have a motion.
So moved.
Motion, second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. We will now go into our small-scale amendment, which has to be considered before the next rezoning application. This is a public hearing concerning the review of ordinance amending the future land use map SSA 2023-02 that the board will review and recommend to the Board of County Commissioners for adoption, an ordinance amending future land use map for a small-scale amendment. And good morning. John, are you presenting today?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much, and thank you, Board. I'll just kind of give a quick synopsis over this property here. Didn't know if we want to try to expedite this, if there's any speakers today too. We can kind of sure that we do have agreement with all the criteria for the rezoning and the small scale for this project.
Yeah, it looks like all of our speakers are on the Warrington overlay case. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this small-scale amendment? Okay, in cases where we don't have any opposition and all of the criteria is met, we have an expedited forum to keep things moving. You're requesting that. Board members, are you okay with moving forward with expedited process here?
So moved.
Motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. That's the easy way to do it, right, John?
That's right.
Okay, so now we'll put the regular planning board meeting back in recess.
We
Excuse me,
still
I'm
need to
sorry.
vote for the comprehensive,
Oh, I'm sorry, that's correct, yes. That was just to accept it as expedited. All right, before we vote on that, are there any questions concerning, I know each of you have reviewed the package before the meeting. Are there any questions concerning those issues? All right, Chair will entertain a motion for SSA 2023-02.
Make a motion to approve.
All right, motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I was getting too far ahead of myself. Got excited that we're moving forward. All right. That's right. Now we will put the regular planning board meeting in recess and reopen the quasi-judicial hearing. We are back in quasi-judicial hearing. I would remind everyone who was sworn in that you are still under oath for this next case. Members of the board, I'm going to ask if there's been any ex parte communication on this case with you, applicants, agents, attorneys, witnesses, fellow planning board members, or the general public Also, have you visited the subject site, and are you a business associate or relative of any of the parties? And Steve?
No to all.
Thank you.
No to all.
No to all.
Chairman, no to all?
No to all.
No to all.
No to all.
No to all.
All right. In this case, the applicant is Escambia County Development Services, which is the agent for Escambia County, the owner, 3300 West DeSoto Street, 0.36 acres, medium-density residential, to public. I'm assuming you don't have any opposition to showing the maps and photography to start with?
Yeah, I can do that, not a
Okay.
problem.
Go ahead, sir.
John Fisher, Escambia County Development Services, Senior Planner. This is the location map. Here we are looking at the zoning map, currently MDR. This is the future land use map of mixed-use urban, which we just recommended approval for to move that to public. This is the existing land use map. It is currently a vacant building on there with the proposal of the BCC to turn it into a Brownsville library. This is the CRA map. It is in the Brownsville area. And this is the aerial map. This is the public hearing sign looking north along Shoemaker Street. Public hearing sign looking east across Shoemaker Street at the Brownsville Community Center. This is public hearing sign looking south along Shoemaker Street. Looking southwest across Shoemaker Street at the subject property. This is the public hearing sign looking north at the subject property. And this is the overall view looking north, showing the whole building from that side. And looking east along West DeSoto Street. And looking southeast from the subject property. And looking southwest from the subject property. And this is looking west along West DeSoto Street. And those are the maps and photography.
Okay. In this case, we also do not have anyone signed up for a speaker request. I'm assuming that the request is meeting all of the criteria.
Yes, staff found it, that it meets all 6 criteria.
Okay. Board members, we can move forward with expedited approval since it does meet all of the criteria and there are no speakers. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right. All right, that concludes the quasi judicial rezoning hearing. Thank you, sir. We will now go back to our regular planning board meeting and reopen into session. And we will now go directly into public hearing 5.2, which is a public hearing concerning the review of ordinance amending Chapter 3, Section 3-3.8 Warrington Overlay, that the board review and recommend to the Board of County Commissioners for adoption an ordinance amending the Land Development Code, Chapter 3, Section 3-3.8 Warrington Overlay to amend the application of separating of same uses within the district. All right, and John, are you going to be presenting that one as well?
No, we have CRA representative.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Max.
All righty. Morning, sir. If you'll please state your name and position for the record.
Good morning. Max Rogers, Escambia County CRA Development Program Manager.
Thank you. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
All righty. Go ahead.
As stated in the background summary, the distance restriction requirement in the Warrington area is limiting some of the redevelopment opportunities. Although this is not limited to one specific site, I did point out that we do have a abandoned gas station that can't be redeveloped due to the distance requirement. Whatever perceived negative effect that convenience stores may have or may thought of had at the time that this ordinance was put in place, we believe that redeveloping those sites where the highest and best use could be a gas station or convenience store would be in the best interest of Warrington.
Okay. All right, we do have a couple of speakers. Is there any questions before we move into the speakers? All right. Let's see, we have Bill Van Horn. Morning, sir.
Do I need to be sworn?
No, not on this one,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
okay. Sorry
Yes,
about
sir.
that. My name's Bill Van Horn. I live at 41 Bay Shore Drive, Pensacola, Florida, 32507, which is Warrington. I've been there 35 years. I'm going to kind of limit to this. All of Warrington needs as much help as it can get, but using Navy Boulevard, Gulf Beach Highway, Barrancas, the corners there that front the base and the National Cemetery and the Blue Angels. People coming off the base by ship think that they're coming into a blighted area or a war zone, and the 55,000 people that cross those intersections a day don't understand why those corners aren't developed. They don't understand this 2,500-foot overlay, and I understand that, you know, but they drive through there, they think it's a high crime area, they see nothing going on, and it's been that way for years. If this is passed, it would generate literally millions of dollars in taxes between fuel, recharging stations for electric cars, between the convenience stores taxes, between the real estate taxes, all the fuel different taxes. Escambia County would only be a great benefit. It would, millions of dollars will be spent on those corners to improve it and bring it to the 21st century to where everybody thinks it's forgotten and just a high crime area in a blighted area that no one cares about. And again, the people from out of the country and out of the towns that fly in here for the National Cemetery, or if it's the Blue Angels, or if it's any other events, they don't know that there's an overlay district that doesn't allow a convenience store that might be, 500 feet, large, that no one else can build close to them, or to improve any of their properties, to beautify Warrington and beautify the area, and give the respect to the base that it deserves, and give the respect to the people of Warrington that it deserves. It's just, whoever developed this, it might have looked good on paper, but it has totally stifled Warrington humongously, and the tax benefits and the funds that would come in would just be tremendous. And I just can't see how anybody would look against approving this. These people have to drive by there every day, whether you're in Perdido Key, whether your civil service, the base has over 30,000 people between civil service and the people that live there. That's the first thing they come and see, whether they're coming or going. And it just, it's just not American. I mean, but I'll leave it at that, and I'm sure you're all intelligent enough to know what I'm talking about. If you have any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But this is something that's long, long overdue, and I just to beg you to understand it.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Kevin Wade? Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
State your name and address, please, for the record.
Kevin Wade, 413 Southeast Boblets. So you drive by this one gas station, and I say gas station, it's been a gas station a few times. And since its inception, it's had the placards on the front for decades now. The one placard reads regular. And if that's the state of Warrington, this overlay needs to be regular. This one special instance in an overlay that I'm so glad that the recommendation is to change this. Absolutely. This needs to be gone. Yeah. Oh, like seeing this, the one gas station come and go, you know, right after Ivan, it got opened back up, and that was a godsend, you know, at a time when everybody remembers having to drive 20, 30, 40 miles at times to get gas. And having that available in locally was absolutely a godsend. And I love to see Warrington looking pretty again and having businesses that are thriving. And as much as I love the little Navy grocer and so on, the competition is going to be good, and it's not going to hurt them. And we don't need this protectionism. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jim Kaufman. Morning, sir.
Hey, everybody. My name's Jim Kaufman. I've come before you today to speak on behalf of the Warrington Revitalization Committee in favor or in support of amending the language of the overlay to remove convenience stores. I've been living in this community for 20 years, and at 407 Vancouver Street, I guess that has to go on the record too. And I have to say ditto to everything that Mr. Van Horn says and Kevin says. This overlay is holding up a lot of revitalization, the specific purpose of the committee that I chair, and I would thank you to consider it.
Thank you, sir. I do have a question for you. I'm always amazed that we have rules against things, but I'm mostly interested in what incentives are we providing to encourage a variety of businesses, restaurants or other types of businesses to go in this area. I think, to me, that seems to use the carrot instead of the stick a little more, but can you elaborate on any plans for those kind of things?
There are plenty of proposed developments going on in the, or they're not even going on, they're just proposed. For example, revitalizing this gas station. There's a grocery store that is small enough that somebody considered it to be a convenience store. And the gas station, of course, will sell candy and cigarettes and cola. So it has a convenience store connotation too. But it can't be opened or even considered because of this overlay.
Okay, so are there any financial or tax incentives for bringing businesses into this area?
Chair, right now, currently, and Max can probably dive into this a lot more, there is currently none available to commercial entities that they can do. There were previous ones for facade and signage and I believe landscaping too, but that is sadly all gone by the wayside. Currently, all the CRA programs are geared towards residential.
Okay. So it seems like that might be a good focus to try to bring some of that back, because I think incentives work well if they're done properly. So
I like the idea. I'm the chair of the committee, so I'll certainly put it on the agenda and we'll talk about it.
yeah, I mean, I don't know what type of funding might be out there from the feds or the state or anything like that for economic development, but it just seems like it might be, a way to go. So.
Thanks for the advice.
All right.
It's
Thank you.
appreciated.
Good luck. Good luck with it, sir. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, out of curiosity, I thought a CRA division is designed to, as the development happens, there's a fund for extra taxes and stuff to help incentivize. Isn't that the whole purpose of a CRA?
Indeed it is. The Warrington, the park that runs along Bio Grande, that was funded by the CRA. The streetlights are funded by the CRA. The septic to sewer conversions, those are partially funded by the CRA. We're spending the money that is allotted to us via the TIF on things that are improving the community. But all I can do in this case is come in and recommend that this be approved.
So just, I guess to speak on that point is, the CRA sets a base year whenever it was started, and and freezes whatever the property values were at that time, and then the increase over that every year is then 95% of that is kept in and is paid by the taxing authority, so the county at this point, and I would assume the Children's Trust as well would be a taxing authority over this. School district and ECOA are exempt, but those funds are then supposed to be kept into the CRA area. So, I think if you're looking at something like this to bring in more investment, that's what you want to see in a CRA is the opportunity for investment to then, increase the property values of that area to continue to fund that TIF at a higher level. So you'll find my support on this.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I will say that the Warrington, specifically that overlay and that CRA will sunset in December 31st of 2025. So this is just cleaning up the language that should have been addressed roughly 20 years ago. And there has been subsequent changes that have been brought to this board, I think in 2017 in regards to food trucks, and it was approved. Otherwise, most everything of this will eventually sunset in 2.5 years. So, but this is a passion project for me. Actually, spoke with Carrie to make sure I did not have, because I vice chair with Mr. Kaufman, the Warrington Revitalization Committee. So seeing any all development come into our area means a lot. So I will say that.
So I'm assuming that these restrictions were put in place just so that we didn't have pawn shop after pawn shop after pawn shop right next to each other,
And
which
two
at
pa-
one time
and
it
two
was.
tattoo parlors.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I'd love to see incentives used and, get some of these businesses that have done so well in downtown shifted over there because, as the gentleman said, there's a lot of people coming in to that area, and it definitely needs a lot of work. So, okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Good luck with it.
Thanks so much for having me. I think I ran out my time some time ago.
Okay, any other questions or comments from board members? All right, so we need to make a motion to accept the language.
So moved.
Motion, second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, good luck with it. Thank you. And Max, and Jim, maybe from time to time, either get with Horace or something. We'd love to hear some updates from time to time if we can get you just on as a general info item or something on our agenda, just because I think it's important to all of us up here that part of town start really having some progress. So we'd love to hear about it. So, yes, sir. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, we don't have any more cases, but we do need to talk about follow-up report or 6-month outlook. Drew, anything that you or Horace want to report?
Don't have anything. Drew, you have anything to me? Well, yeah. As I already said, we are in the process. The Board of County Commissioners are in the process of basically an at-large position till the planning will be coming before the board. I believe March 23rd. But it's coming for the board on March 23rd for the at-large position.
Okay. And I don't want to bring up a thorn that gets us off on a tangent, but anything more about the sector plan changes?
The sector plan is still alive and well.
I think
It's-
we're all
it's
waiting
still
for
alive.
that. And that not be the case.
It's alive. Let me put it this way. Let me say it correctly. The sector plan is alive.
Okay. What steps are being taken? I thought we were in the process of trying to remove it completely. So what steps are being taken?
Mr. Drew?
Mr. Jones and I had extensive conversations with Tallahassee regarding this, and there were multiple plans looked at. Essentially, at this point, if the sector plan is removed, anyone that's underneath that will revert to the 2030 flu, at which point it might be extremely difficult for some of them to get the development rights that have been afforded through the sector plan. Currently, folks are opting out.
Yes.
We've got more that we just found out are going to be coming, more cases. And we're going to keep working with Tallahassee to see at what point Tallahassee is going to say, hey, it's no longer viable. But at this point, things are moving ahead. People are inquiring about developing in there to the densities and uses allowed by the sector plan. So, as Mr. Jones said, it's alive, just not 100% well.
Okay. Anything else you want to give us an update on?
We just want to thank y'all, boy, because we do have some. We know that it takes lots of your time, but we appreciate what you're doing. Also, with our new attorney that we have, she's very, very sharp. She's learning, she's listening, but we are so glad to have her. She's extremely sharp, just learning the ropes.
Where's the cell phone jar fund? Where are we on that? I know it's been talked about a couple of times, but there should be a good number of money in that.
You know,
Specifically
I think if
from one
Ronnie,
person.
Ronnie Swain was still here, Horace would have been really in big trouble. Ronnie used to make sure that you paid your $5 to the donut fund if you did that. So that's,
Man, we could have a party by now.
We could have a party for sure. So
Just off of me?
yeah, just off of you, Horace. Welcome. I haven't met you yet, but I'll introduce myself after the meeting. But do you have anything for county attorney's update? Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the board have anything for the board? All right, then we are adjourned. Thank you.
Next meeting is April 4th. Please be here. We have 3 future land uses, 3 rezonings, and I need a quorum.
Feeling sick